candidates here, Montgomery County Tea Party. We're here with, excuse me, Mike Sullivan. He's running for Lone Star College District 8 position. It's October 2nd, 2018. With Ms. Del Fessenden, Bob Bagley, Larry Rogers, and John Boucher. And Mike, if you'd like to go ahead as we discussed and take up to 5 minutes with an opening, please feel free. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, sir. I'm going to talk to everybody in the room, and the camera can record it. That's okay, but I'm not going to be speaking to the camera because y'all are the endorsement committee, and that's what's important to me. I am running for the position, District 8 on Lone Star College. As you know, they're transitioning from all at-large seats to all district seats, and this is the last tranche of 3 seats that's going to district. So for all practical purposes, it's an open seat. The current incumbent is Ron Trowbridge, but he's not seeking re-election. I am running, it's a nonpartisan race, and I'm proud of my Republican credentials, Republican background. I have a long history of running in Republican races and Republican voting history. So my principles are similar to your principles in that I think we need good conservative leadership on our college board, just like we need good conservative leadership in the governor's office in Texas. I have a history of public service, beginning with Humboldt School Board. I ran there and won, then ran for an open seat on Houston City Council and won. My last term on Houston City Council, I was the only council member that was unopposed. Very proud of that. I think it was a sign that my constituents were happy with my service. And then decided to run against an incumbent, which we don't usually do, but when Republicans control all the offices, then that's going to happen sometimes. I ran against Don Sumners for Harris County Tax Assessor Collector, defeated him in the primary about 75-25, went on to win the general election, served 4 years, ran for re-election in 2016, but was defeated in the Democrat sweep of Harris County. So I am still interested in public service, and I think having school board, city, county experience will help me be a good trustee. These are nonpartisan seats, as I said. City council's nonpartisan. You don't run by party, you don't serve by party, but you're governed by your principles, and my Republican principles will help me as well as my experience. As far as my personal life goes, I've been married 34 years. My wife and I have 1 daughter. She's 26, turned 26 Sunday. I was happy to spend the day with her in Austin at a conference. And she married 2 years ago, and her husband just graduated from law school in May. He's enrolled in the Air Force, or enlisted in the Air Force, I should say, and wants to be a JAG officer. It's an important part of our life, and we're prayerful that it works out the way that he wants it to. So that's my personal life. Professionally, I am currently employed at Group 1 Automotive. Group 1 is the largest automotive retailer in Texas, the 3rd largest in the nation. Locally, you might know us by some of our brands: Sterling McCall, Advantage BMW, Mercedes-Benz at Clear Lake, Mundy Chevrolet, which is close by here to the Woodlands. And what it does, what I do for them is everything from monitor legislation to work with charities and help with corporate and philanthropic work that we do through the company. We're a large company. We have 14,000 employees. We own nearly 200 dealerships in our portfolio. We have 49 in the UK, 17 in Brazil, and I am only responsible for domestic operations. So I work with federal, state, and local officials, work with chambers of commerce, I work with trade associations, and I work with our dealers, general managers, to help in any way that I can. I'm here tonight to seek the endorsement of the organization. It's an endorsement that I would like to have, I'd be proud to have, and I would advertise. And rather than filling up another minute, I'll yield it back.
Well, we appreciate you coming in, and thanks for the overview.
Yes, sir.
So, on the under the general category, there was a question: what are the 3 largest challenges currently facing this position office, and your roadmap to address them? You said Lone Star College challenge trying to reopen the flood-ravaged Kingwood campus. Just real briefly, how has that come along?
Coming along well. I am active still in the community and attending events where the president of Lone Star College, Kingwood, is out touting what's going on. Campus was ravaged, as I said. They've opened portions of it as they become available. And what they've had to do is transition a number of students from in-class to online. And frankly, it will be something to look at as far as going forward. Maybe there'll be more opportunities for students to take online classes when in fact they didn't intend to.
Yeah, and we've seen that before in some of the Lone Star College races. It seems like some people candidates were all brick and mortar, and you kind of wondered about their motives, tied in with developers, engineers, contractors, and that sort of thing. You know, when it seems like colleges are going more online, not necessarily high school, because they still need that kind of nurturing face-to-face time, but colleges, typically online. And I think that's probably what we want to try to get away from, so we don't spend, have a significant amount of money that we're tied into the indebtedness. And I'll get to that later, but the third part of that is that you said affordability of college must be addressed. Students should not be forced into debt simply to pursue a degree. Other than various scholarships and grants, what's your solutions to this?
Well, keeping costs down for students not only helps the student, it helps their parents. I went back to school, and I don't know if you'll cover this later, but I'm kind of a late bloomer, if you will. I did not graduate, did not attend college or graduate. So when I won my city council seat, I went back to Lone Star College, Kingwood, and I'm proud of achieving an Associate of Arts degree from Lone Star Kingwood, and then went to U of H downtown, and I'll say this tongue-in-cheek, got a BS in political science. So that has served me well, and I can attest to the fact that students need to be able to afford school, but not go into debt. I was fortunate to pay for not only my 4 years of college, but my daughter's 4 years at Baylor as well, and not go into debt for it. But not every family's in that situation. And to just go to college, to get into debt, to get a degree, to struggle to find a job, and struggle to get things paid off it's a poor service to the student as well as the families.
Okay.
So we need to keep costs low.
Okay, I like your answer to the question, do religious and moral views have any role in county governance? You indicated in your last sentence there that we should not back down to fringe groups who try to infringe on our rights. From the news articles I read, almost everybody, in order to avoid legal costs, because it is very expensive, it is very time-consuming, resource-consuming, they just concede the Freedom from Religious Foundation, et cetera, et cetera. Are you indicating that you would actually vote to fight back?
I am. And I have, the good thing that I can point to is one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to show that I've proven it and that I've done it.
Yes.
In my service on Houston City Council, I served 2 years under Bill White, and then I served 3 years under Elise Parker. And I pushed back on every social agenda item that she had and was proud of it. And frankly, I think I received so much publicity in those 3 years, that's why I defeated the incumbent tax assessor, who has the best name ID in the business because everybody writes their check out to him. But I defeated him 75-25 in a Republican primary because for 3 years, after almost every city council meeting, the news media go, Mayor Parker, what do you think? Councilman Sullivan, what do you think? And they gave me an opportunity to voice my opposition to her programs. Happy to do it, have done it, and will do it again. Because it is, I can't, I'm Episcopalian by religion, Christian. I don't apologize for that. I don't hide from it. I have participated at the invitation of Steve Griggle with Grace Community Church that's close to you. I've participated in numerous national days of prayer on the steps of Houston City Hall. Sponsored it, led it, read the proclamations from the governor, read the proclamations from Congress. And was very proud to do that.
Great. I have a few seconds left. How will you improve transparency and access financial and other records? You said you're all for transparency, and that's great, but I didn't see anything that satisfied the how will you improve portion of that question.
I have to be elected first to see how Lone Star governs, to see how I would be allowed to push for transparency and openness. In city council, I was governed by the Open Records Act of Texas. What I would do, I didn't hide from it all, and I received several requests for my records, my emails. I would simply bring my CPU in, set it on the conference room table, and say, have at it.
Okay, very good. Bob?
We've seen a change over the years in the junior colleges or community college, where they've taken on sports activities now in competition, where that wasn't the original setup or designed for community colleges or junior colleges. It used to be a college where you could work during the daytime and have classes that you could go to at night to be able to get what you needed to, to further your education, whether it be to go to a four-year college or work within the community college doing trade schools. What's your feeling? Do you think that we should have intramural sports within a junior college or a community college?
I think the basic function of the community college is to train students for an Associate of Arts degree, a workforce certificate, or a technology program, so that you can either accumulate hours, they can transfer to a four-year university, you can earn a certificate and go into a field, or you can pursue the Associate of Arts degree and be certified and go into the work program. Strong supporter of that. I think anything outside of that probably doesn't need to be done. I am not opposed to sports fan, but we don't need to, for instance, build a facility for education and then make sure that we build a natatorium, make sure we build a dance hall, make sure we build a fine arts center. That's going to put me across ways with some of the trustees and probably even some of the college presidents who promote fine arts and promote extracurricular activities. Those are good, but we have to focus on the additional basic core philosophy to teach students so that they can go into the workforce and nothing else. If you want to go into programs like that, clearly the four-year universities offer them.
That would cut back our taxes as well by doing so.
It should. Not only capital expenditures, but the operational expense, the overhead, in university, well, in high school even, teachers that sponsor organizations receive stipends.
Mm-hmm.
So they get paid the teacher salary, they get a stipend, and there's a place for it in high school. I'm a strong supporter of that. My daughter benefited from it by participating. In junior college, community college level, not so much so. Four-year university, you're paying the freight yourself for the most part. Look, 40%, according to Lone Star, 40% of their students are already receiving financial aid. If that's the case, then let's really focus on education and training.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
You're currently with Group 1. How long have you been with them?
About a year and a half.
About a year and a half.
Yes, sir. I lost my election in November of 2016. My term went to December 31, and I took a couple of weeks off in early January and started January 16, 2017 with Group 1.
Okay, great. In your general question and answers here, you also said that you were a small business owner. What and how long?
Thank you for asking. I'm really proud of that. When I came out of high school, I attended University of Houston. First semester I was on probation. Second semester they suspended me. First person in my family to ever try to go to college. And I went to work in the family business. And my mom and dad had started a paint business, mainly marine and industrial coatings. So I went straight into the business. Started out driving a truck, servicing paint jobs, selling paint jobs. When my dad passed away in '91, I purchased the company from my mother. And then in about 2002, I started becoming involved in politics because there was believe it or not, a paint trade association lobbyist in Austin. Everybody has to have a lobbyist. Paint industry had a lobbyist. I met him, and all kidding aside, he said, you need to get involved. Come up here, sit in committee hearings, meet your elected officials, walk the halls, learn the process. And I started doing that. The more I did it, the more people I met, the more I liked it. And that's when I got the bug to run for office. So I also have had a real estate broker's license since the early '80s. So my wife and I have done both residential and commercial real estate brokerage sales from the 80s and to current. So that's my private sector experience. Working for Group 1 is the first time I've ever worked for anyone. Been self-employed my entire life. I don't say that as a badge of honor. I say that because I've been through cycles. I've made money, I've been broke. I've made money, I've been broke. Made payroll, put my daughter through Baylor, put myself through school. And I think those are good life experiences to take to a board that governs and represents taxpayers.
One other quick one. You've been appointed the last 3 Republican governors to serve on board or commission.
Yes, sir.
Governor Abbott, you were Texas Military Preparedness Commission. Governor Perry, the task force, the unfunded mandates. That one you may need to explain a little bit to me.
Sure,
That's
you bet.
about
Happy to.
my pay scale.
Yes, sir. Almost driving down the street, I got a phone call from Governor Perry's office and said, look, we are, unfunded mandates at every level of government is a problem. I want a task force, I want school board members, I want city council members, I want mayors, and I'm gonna appoint 9 people, only 9 people from across the state to be on this task force for unfunded mandates. And y'all gotta review a series of new legislation that I send to you, and you give me your input based on your experience. So we had meetings and conference calls, and based on my city council experience and my school board experience, was able to give input to that. Yes, sir. Thank you.
You identified workforce training for people to receive a degree or a certificate for specific skills. I think that's a great idea. One of the fastest growing and fastest evolving areas is in technology, which when I was in school, it was just called computer science. On your website, you say today's employers require leading technology and tools of their employees. So have you given any thought as to how to keep that curriculum current and relevant since it's evolving so quickly?
Sure. I think the key is to have partnerships with industry. Lone Star has degrees in health science, they have degrees in AutoCAD, auto tech, accounting, technologies, IT, and the idea, I think, is to work with the private sector and the community to see what they need. I mean, Lone Star service area is 1,400 square miles. That's where they need to focus on meeting the needs of the business community, not just the 1,400, but to start there, or whatever those local needs are, to work with the community to develop programming and then train workforce. I can tell you across the board, it is, for instance, in real estate, it's a buyer's market. In workforce, it's an employee market. It's a prospective employee market. There's a shortage of skilled workforce and skilled employees. Employers have stepped up, be it oil field, healthcare. We've got to work with all of them to meet their needs.
Well, you mentioned work-study programs, internships, community partnerships, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this thing we talked about earlier, student debt. So on your website under affordability, you talk about the cost of education and your belief that it's senseless to burden students with excessive debt as they are pursuing and earning a degree, which I agree with that. And according to a study done by the Institute for the College Access and Success, 55% of students are graduating from college in Texas with debt. And the average borrower is about $26,824, which is huge. So you mentioned work-study programs, internships, and community partnerships to assist with costs of education, and those are all great ideas. But would you limit financial assistance to certain fields of study or based upon participation with one of those aforementioned situations, such as internships or work-study programs?
I think it should be market-driven. I think if an employee has a need and he or she's willing to put students to work, and the student has the interest and the potential skills to work with that employer, then they should be able to do it.
Well, that's why I asked about the financial component of that with the assistance, because there are a lot of people who just go to college and they get a degree that they can't use. And so that's where a lot of that debt is. So I was trying to see if they were incentivizing people to go into these certain fields where the demand is, which would benefit the student also.
No doubt, it would. Everybody would win. The employer would win, the student would win. We employ, when I was on city council, we had interns that I would end up sometimes hiring, because they did such a good job for me. They were sent to me by University of Houston Center for Public Policy, and they would intern for free, and then I'd put them on hourly payroll, and if they're really good, I'd end up offering them a job when they graduated. In the tax office, I did the same thing, working with University of Houston, not because I attended, but because they had the most students interested in the program. And they would come and they work for me either in finance or in banking or in logistics or in customer service or in automobile services, license plates, titling, transfers. And then if they worked out, we offered them a job, and that's the way to do it. The student had to prove that they were capable of providing the service to the office, and if they were, if we had the money in the budget, then we offered them a job.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about budget. What's the budget of Lone Star College?
They have an operating budget and a capital budget. The operating budget, according to their website and latest numbers, is $373 million. And I believe the capital budget is about the same, but I cannot say for certain.
Okay. You said you support using zero-based budgeting practices in every governmental entity. Do you know if Lone Star College is using this approach in everything that they do? And if not, would you introduce, I guess, a resolution for the board to vote on to do that, to pursue that?
Sure. I do not know if they use zero-based budgeting or not, but I think it is a good idea. They are too big and too far-flung with too many, they're completely decentralized. While they will say they're centralized, I know it's all taped and I'm gonna catch grief for it as time goes on, but that's okay. When you have 6 different universities and then centers of those universities, and each campus has its own president and its own administration, that's a lot of overhead. When I was selling paint, I can tell you the overhead, we knew it every day going into the office, we knew it every day going home from work. And if you don't control your cost, they'll absolutely get away from you. If we didn't sell paint, if I don't sell real estate, if we don't sell cars, we don't have the revenue. There's no taxpayer to go to have revenue and for cash flow. So I'm sensitive to it. It's a concept that if they're not doing it, they should certainly look at it. There is, in education, it's inherent to have a strong overhead of administration, both in the system, in this case, the system office, as well as at the colleges. Every college has a president and a vice chancellor of administration and student success, and the list goes on. And until I can become more expert in what they do, it'd be unfair for me to broad brush criticize them. But zero-based budgeting is a concept, and it's proven, and it works, and I'm supportive of it. As far as offering a resolution, absolutely no doubt, bring it up for discussion. And a lot of times when you do that, and I've done it in every office I've been in, even if you don't accomplish it, you shine light on the opposition. So that if it's opposed, why do you oppose it? And can you justify why you oppose it? Because these meetings are held in public, and we're accountable to the public and the taxpayers.
Okay, you believe that compensation for teachers and chancellors should be based on merit, and conceptually that's an easy thing to agree to. The devil's in the details, and so the real question needs to be, how do you define and how do you measure merit? And have you done that, have you applied that in any of your career phases of your life?
I have always been a part of the Superintendent's Evaluation Committee at Humble ISD, where we evaluated the superintendent, we gave them goals. There are legal requirements the superintendent has to meet with respect to education, and then we would evaluate the additional budget items that we had control over, we had input on, and then just evaluate the superintendent and pay the superintendent accordingly. It is an ever-increasing glide path, if you will, on salaries for educators. I'm not talking about the classroom administrators, excuse me, with school superintendents, chancellors across the country, as well as their high-level support staff, and just have to get a handle on it. And if there's a threat of someone wanting to say, I will leave if I'm not offered this, then maybe it's a good opportunity for him to go try something else. The chancellor, at Lone Star just renewed his contract within the last maybe 3 or 4 months. I don't know what the terms were, so I don't know the salary or the conditions or even how many years of service. State law says that the chancellor's contract should be 3 years or less, if I'm not mistaken. Some chancellors have a 4 and 5 year contract, and those additional years are paid for by outside funding or by their internal foundation. So it's something certainly to consider and look at. I am not on a headhunting mission to take out Chancellor Steve Head. I know him, I've worked with him over the years. I think he has the best interest of the taxpayers at heart, but he's fighting a bit with the administration.
Okay, Bob?
I liked your answer with working with businesses to meet their needs, to be able to have students educated to be able to help the workforce. We have a problem with our public schools though. 2 years ago when we were doing these interviews, it was brought up that 75%, approximately 75% of the high school graduates that are entering Lone Star College are having to be tutored. Are you for working with the state legislature and the public school system, the high schools, to be able to get this so that there's a decrease in this, so that when the kids are coming, the students are coming to the college, they're actually ready to start learning? Is there anything that you can do to do this?
You're right. An extraordinarily high percentage of students that enter into college, enter into Lone Star, enter into remedial classes. And that, besides starting out behind the curve, remedial classes are not credit hours. So if a student takes remedial math, remedial reading, they've got 3, 6, or 9 hours of classes that they've taken that they don't get credit for. So they have to pass the remedial classes to get to the classes where they actually start to earn credit. So these classes take money. These classes take physical facilities. They take teacher time, tutoring time, testing center time within the universities. It eats up a lot of resources. The burden is really on the high schools and the ISDs to make sure that students that leave are prepared. Now, some students I think that do go to college are those that are getting financial aid that are then starting behind the bus. They're starting with remedial classes. Well, then that student might not be ideal for a community college. Not everyone has the ability to be a student in a community college or a full 4-year university. Just like I wasn't. When I graduated from high school, I went to U of H, I went on probation, then I was suspended for a year. I wasn't ready. There was no reason for me to advance beyond that, to either incur debt or to take the place of someone else that could take, that was maybe better prepared to start their higher education career. District 8 is small in that it has Humble ISD, New Caney ISD, and a little bit of Conroe ISD. There's no reason that I, as their district representative, can't be a liaison to work with them to start the dialogue and to say, what can we do? We're getting students that fill in the blank. How can I help?
I'm just wondering if part of this, I mentioned the state legislature, because the teachers are having to teach the test, and they're not teaching what the kids need to learn to be able to be out there in the workforce or to carry on.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you, and I can be a part of any lobby effort on education reform. The chairman of the Public Ed Committee is State Representative Dan Huberty. Coincidentally, he's my state representative and a very good friend. He's committed to education, and I can certainly bend his ear as well as the superintendents of those 3 ISDs. And together, maybe we can have an impact in Austin. But keep in mind, going to Austin and advocating means you're asking for money, but then again, if we are not spending it wisely, we don't need it, we shouldn't have it, it just goes down the drain.
Thank you.
I'm a taxpayer like everybody in this room and everyone that's gonna vote.
How many students are in Lone Star College?
They advertise 99,000 students in their system. About 84,000, I believe, are credit hour students, and the other 10,000 will be your workforce and your certificate students that are there for non-credit hours.
Are all the campuses at capacity, or?
I don't know. I don't believe so, but I don't know.
Okay. I forget the name of there's a Lone Star has a program for high school students to get credits. If they're having a hard time in high school, they can go to a program at Lone Star and get much better one-on-one help. I don't know the name of the program. There is a name for it. I don't remember what it is. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. I'm familiar with the dual credit program but those are your students that are not generally in need of help. Dual credit would be junior and senior high school students who are receiving credit for graduation from high school and receiving credit from, in this case, Lone Star College, that would apply toward their associate's degree or their transfer to a four-year university. My daughter took Spanish as a dual credit course at Kingwood High School, but that was all. Other students can rack up enough hours, they can conceivably graduate with an associate of arts degree when they receive their high school diploma, which is still hard for me to understand.
This program is really unique. It takes high school kids that are having a problem getting the proper help that they need, and they go to Lone Star, and there's a lot of them that go.
It's outstanding.
It's an outstanding program.
Sounds like it. Sorry, I don't know more about that.
Sir?
Okay, you mentioned there's 85,000 students approximately enrolled right now, 95 total, 10,000 you mentioned were in the workplace. You know, on the budget question, you said that you would limit budget increases to a factor based on the enrollment growth. And I know that this area is growing quickly, Texas in general. So I know the enrollment growth is growing, pretty big. But on the following question, you answered that you're in favor of zero-based budgeting, and those two answers to me seem to conflict a bit. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Sure, you bet. In zero-based budgeting, that's a philosophical practice that I believe in. More funding for student growth actually could benefit from zero-based budgeting if it's done correctly. To say that I would be in favor of more money to accommodate more students does not conflict, in my opinion, does not conflict with zero-based budgeting. I think you could do both. If you have rapid student enrollment growth, might even be more reason to focus on zero-based budgeting or some strict budgeting control to keep costs down so that you can fund the new enrollment.
And well, the reason I felt like it conflicted is because one driver is student enrollment, but then the other driver is zero-based budgeting, looking at line by line and determining, you know, to control cost better.
Sure. I'm not an expert in the college or the university budget, let me say that first, but the number of students doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily drive the budget up. The number of students are a component of the budget, but you have facilities, you have security, you have insurance, you have benefits, you have salaries, all the other costs that are there, I think generally regardless of the student enrollment. In other words, they're not fixed costs in the conventional definition, but they're fixed costs in that they're there from year to year to year. And what seems to adjust and change over time are the number of faculty and adjunct professors and the number of students. Hope I'm not talking in circles on that. But I believe that if you don't have enough money, you can still manage, because I've had to do that in business, and we've all done that in various businesses. You take your budget and you do the best you can with it to meet your needs. You have more students coming in the door, it's the same thing in local school districts and the ISDs. Growth is just absolutely through the top, and the schools still bring them in, still teach them, and then work on the funding as well.
Thank you.
Back to the budget. Some people say this county is drunk on bonds. We're in over $6.5 billion when you include all the government, the schools, the ISDs, MUDs, and everything. Do you know what the current indebtedness of the Lone Star College is right now?
I don't, no, sir.
So it's 1.15 billion right now. That includes 728 in principal, 728,000 plus 422 in interest. So moving down a little, well, okay, so, yeah, related taxes. The question was, why did increase property evaluations? Will you vote to decrease the property tax for Lone Star College? You said yes. Do you know how much is appropriate? Have you considered what amount would be effective?
Yeah, John, I don't, but as the former tax assessor collector, I know very well that appraised values continue to go up. There is an exemption for most taxing jurisdictions, be it an ISD, college district, or a city or a MUD. Those exemptions vary quite a bit. For instance, an ISD is now required to have, I think, a $20,000 or $25,000 homestead exemption. The college system, I think, is around $5,000. It's not much. You could increase the homestead exemptions as an offset. You could reduce the tax rate as an offset. But with the appraised values going up, it is continuing to throw more money into the college system. And just because it does, doesn't mean it's okay. Now, to Lone Star's credit, they have kept their tax rate flat to down. They have been, I mean, I'm living in Kingwood for 25 plus years, and the tax rate seems like it's always been about 11 cents. So the appraised values have gone up, and the tax rate has stayed the same, but the net, well, the gross rather, is quite a bit of increase, and there's no reason we shouldn't look at trying to reduce it, and not reducing it a little, but to reduce it significant where it helps the taxpayers.
Okay, thanks.
Of the current board members, do you have one that you think, that in your mind thinks most like you, one that you can relate to the most?
Here's our dilemma. Right now, it's my understanding we have 3 Republicans, Republican-leaning trustees on the board. All 3 of them are leaving. That's Kyle Scott, Dr. Halsey, and Trowbridge, the position that I'm running for. And I am the only Republican running in any of those 3 races. To give you an idea, I filed for this office on day 1 at 8 o'clock because I wanted to establish my seriousness, my thoughtfulness, that I wanted to do this. My opponent filed on the last day of filing. So I go to the Harris County Republican Party and do my due diligence on voting record, and my opponent has voted in the last 2 general elections, 2014 and 2016, this all according to Harris County Republican Party, has no primary voting experience at all, much less Republican primary voting experience. I paid for an open records request for my voting record, both primary and general. I say that to say that I am clearly the only Republican in this race, and the only Republican in this race for District 8. I may very well be the only Republican on the board if elected. To go from 3 to 1 is not the direction that we need to be going in. So is there anyone on the board that I'm like or not like or anything else? I'll tell you, I am a kind of a lone rider. I'm a lone ranger. I do what I think is right. I'm not pushed around by any trustee, just like I wasn't pushed around by council members. I'm not pushed around by any chancellor or chairman of the board, just like I wasn't pushed around by the mayor. But I conduct myself with dignity and respect. I try to be thoughtful and deliberate in my arguments so that people listen to me. And that's what I'll continue to do if elected.
Okay.
Going back to taxes again, there was a bill that was put forth during the last legislative session to try to get rid of property taxes and run it into sales taxes instead. There's always been a pushback from the education system, more from the ISDs, I think, than from the colleges, universities. What's your take on that?
I know we're here interviewing about education, about Lone Star College, but my work and monitoring the legislative sessions has been, my observation has been that the Senate has wanted property tax relief and the House has wanted sales tax. And that is has been the biggest problem with them getting together to provide tax relief. Whether or not ISDs are opposed to reduction of property taxes, I think it's a given that they are, because property taxes fund our public ISDs. Now, doing away with property tax entirely and replacing it with something else is over my head. It's not something I would have a vote on anyway. So I think the important thing to do is to work with our elected officials in Austin, both our state reps and our state senators, to let them know what we expect and what we want. I attended a fundraiser last night for Paul Betancourt, and Paul is still talking about how he was pushing for a 4% cap on residential property value increases, and the House was at 6%. And he said we could not get them to come off of 6%. But he said, guess what? I'm not going away. Dan Patrick's not going away, and we're going to have property tax reduction in the next session. That's what we want to hear, and that's what we need, because that's where it matters.
Well, my whole thing with property tax is that you never own your property as long as you're taxed on it. And so as the taxes continue to rise, whether it's the taxes or the appraisals, we're taxing people out of their homes. And until we do away with that and work from a different money pool, we're no better than what we were when we started as a nation coming over from England, where the king owned it all.
I know we're running out of time, but I do want to say this. Some of you may be in this position, may not, you don't have to say. I was fortunate enough to pay off my home when I was a tax assessor collector, but when I did, I literally went down the street to the Harris County Federal Credit Union and opened a checking account to have money taken out of my check to pay my taxes. Mm-hmm. It is almost exactly the same amount of money as my mortgage, which was my mortgage, my insurance, and my taxes. My home is paid for, but it's not.
Right.
And I understand, I'm living that. And I'd like to think that we could work hard our whole lives, buy a home, pay for it, own it, live there. I'm, in the back of my mind, wondering how long I can stay in my home before I'm taxed out of it, because it means something to me now that's different than what it meant to me 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I truly may be taxed out of my home one day. It's very real.
It's happening in our county.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got room for a couple more quick questions.
Are you?
Okay, I'll go. So tell me your feelings about standardized testing. Has it been useful in preparing students for college? And what do you attribute the lower educational outcomes to? And how can this be improved?
I'm not a fan of standardized education in the ISDs. Excuse me. I think it is a disservice, because what I've seen, both as a school board member and as just a member of the general public, is that teachers have to teach at the test, and that students have to pass the test, or they're penalized, when in fact they may be very bright, and the students, the teachers may be much better than what they are allowed to do. Standardized testing is, I'm just not a fan of it. I don't say that as a political statement. I say it as having seen it in an ISD as a school board member. And then what we've had to do as a parent, for instance, my wife and I, we had to have our daughter, we wanted to, wasn't remedial at all, to advance her. We had to send her to Kumon, which was a training program for math and science. So she would go to school all day, she would do her homework, she'd go to Kumon for her strenuous, rigorous education, and then come home and start over the next day. So our daughter, and I'm sure lots of other students, are not properly challenged because they're having to teach at the test and not having to teach the students.
I would challenge on that, because I don't think when that program was contrived, it was designed to be taught to the test. I mean, I think standardized testing is beneficial if there's certain benchmarks that you have to go to, but I think because of the nature of the educational system, we've arrived at this point where we teach to the test, and it's a disservice to everyone, which I think explains this going into college, whether struggling so much. Could you tell me about, if no one else has any questions, could you explain to me, or for the purpose of this interview, the 60 by 30 TX plan, and does that exclude any certain fields of study, or does it apply to all? And should it?
Sure. The 60/30 plan is a plan that the Texas Higher Coordinating Board, Governor Abbott supports it, and it calls for 60% of the population to have a workforce certificate or degree by 2030. I think it's a goal, and I think it's something for us to work towards. And prior to that, I don't think there was any goal across the state to train our workforce. Now we have a goal to work towards.
And should that apply to all curriculum? I mean, should vendor studies be able to go through that? If there's not a job out there, I mean, if there's not a market demand, should it be market demand driven, or should it just apply to all?
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
I really don't. Yes, sir.
All right, so we're at the point right now, if you want to take up to 5 minutes closing, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Sure, thank you. How about less than 2 minutes? I always believe that short speeches are better speeches. First of all, thank you all for calling me in, and especially for allowing me to come in so late in the interview process. I apologize for having to be the last person on the last day almost, but I appreciate the chance. I do respectfully request the endorsement of the organization. As I said, it's one I want. It's one that I would advertise and be proud to carry and proud to have. Endorsements don't win elections, to be honest with you, but they're very, very helpful. In other words, I have the endorsement of Senator Brandon Creighton, Senator Paul Betancourt, State Representative Michael Schofield, Dennis Paul, Dan Huberty, Harris County Constable Mark Herman, Harris County District Clerk Chris Daniel, Houston City Council Member Dave Martin. The list goes on. None of that matters if I don't get the message out and if I don't work hard. And I think that my name and my experience will win this election. My opponent has no constituency, no voting history, no following, and that's just a fact. And I look forward to a vigorous campaign, whatever that might be. I'm campaigning to win. I'm taking it serious. I'm out in the public every possible opportunity I can. Republican club meetings, lunches, chambers of commerce meetings, evenings, evening events, whatever I can do to stay out in front of the public, to let them know I'm running. My biggest challenge is making sure that people know in past they've been able to pull the straight ticket, the Republican straight ticket, and it would vote for me. This is a down ballot race. The voting straight ticket doesn't vote for me. So last night with Paul Betancourt's endorsement, I used that to launch. Paul Betancourt says vote straight ticket Republican and then go vote for Mike down the ballot. And that's going to have to be my message. I am fearful that Democrats in their zest and zeal may have a program that does somewhat the same thing. It's going to be incumbent upon us to make sure we elect people that are going to represent our values and do a good job for us.
Hopefully that's why you're here tonight.
Yes, sir, no
So
doubt.
thank you for coming in, appreciate that.
My pleasure.